welcome, Dr. Kia. How you doing?
Hello. Thank you. Thank you. I am doing well, and I'm so honored to be here with you today. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. For those of you that's watching and those of you that may catch the replay, I am Apostle Gretchel Dixon, and you are watching Gretchel Dixon's Let's Chat. And I have the privilege and an honor to be with Dr. Kia Everett, all the way from, I call it the East Coast. Would you say the East Coast?
Mm-hmm.
So are
Yes,
you in Philly, Delaware? Where are you?
I am in Delaware. I was born and raised in Philly, so I am a Philly girl, but I am now in Delaware.
Good, good. Yeah, as I wanted to start this month off with, since the focus is mental health. May is Mental Health Month, but every month should be mental health because it's not just for one month. But I wanted to, I was reaching out to Dr. Kia because that is her expertise. That's an area that a lane that she flows in. So, Dr. Kia, before we get started into the other questions, how did you choose mental health, or did mental health choose you?
Well, that's a good question, Apostle. So I would say that it chose me because when I went to school, I was going to school because I wanted to be an attorney. Um, but what I will say is I wanted to be a family attorney. So I wanted to be that attorney that reconciled families, granted adoptions, those kinds of things. Um, but I minored in social work, and so my very first job out of college was in a drug and alcohol facility.
Mhm.
I did not like working with in the drug and alcohol field, but I did enjoy working as a therapist in the mental health field, and so that's how it just spiraled from there.
Oh, wow, that's good. One of the things that Dr. Kia has, I think, I don't know, you guys are watching, you may have heard of it before, but I call it a mental health ER, but it's in mental health urgent care. So, what
Correct.
exactly is that?
So it is set. We have it. The goal is to have it just like the physical. So when you go to the urgent care, you're able to see a doctor, right away. You don't have to wait for months, and whatever is going on, they can at least tell you if it's serious or if it's not serious, or whatever the case may be. And so it's basically the same concept for mental health. Generally, it's not always is that way now because a lot of people are doing it. But at the time that I started, and I tell people I have the first one in the Mid Atlantic region. But when I started doing it, people had to wait a really long time to get therapy. And so I wanted the mental health urgent care to be the place where if they called, we could get them seen within the first 24 to 48 hours of their initial call. And so that is the concept. So we have people that may call today for an appointment and they can be seen as early as tomorrow or Tuesday, right? And then we have people that want to make an appointment, and that's fine too. But we do try to give individuals the option. We do not have a psychiatrist on staff, which is the medical doctor. And so we do have to make referrals when people need medication. But evaluations, therapy, and all of those things we can do.
Oh, okay, okay. Well, so if someone comes to your facility and they have a therapist,
Mm-hmm.
are they able to see that therapist on a continual basis, or do they have to find another person?
So if they come to us and they already have a therapist, then of course they would be referred to their therapist. If
Mhm.
they come to us and they don't have a therapist, then we would assign them to a therapist. Now, if they come and if I understand your question, they may have a therapist. They're in a emergency or crisis situation, and they come to us. And so we are not a crisis center. So that's something totally different. So if somebody's in crisis, suicidal, homicidal, they're talking about doing something or they're having a meltdown, and it looks like it could be a dangerous situation. In that case, we advise them to call 911 or the nearest crisis center.
Mhm.
If the person is with us and they go into that crisis, then it's our staff. walks them through that process.
Oh, okay, okay. So mental health, the urgent care facility.
Yes.
So I was thinking because I know I've known of some people that needed therapy,
Mm-hmm.
but they kept getting the runaround. So do you all specialize in certain types, or if someone needed alcohol or drug therapy, or is it just like a general practitioner that doctor can see everyone? Is there a
So we
specialty?
got we definitely, our specialty is trauma, anxiety, depression. We deal with, some family issues, basically whatever they come with. If it's something they need immediately, we will assign, a clinician to them. However, if during that process the clinician feels like, okay, they need to be referred out, we will do that, right? Because we don't keep anybody that is beyond our scope. If they come in and say they need drug and alcohol therapy, we will get them an appointment to talk about the trauma that's associated. But the
Mhm.
actual specialization, let's say if it's drug and alcohol, we would refer them and advise them to talk to, the drug and alcohol facility, or other counselors that I can refer them to that specialize in drug and alcohol.
Oh, okay, okay. So the other thing is that nowadays it seems like, and maybe because it was something back in my day they didn't talk about, or it was just hidden.
Hmm.
Um, I see a lot of individuals that are dealing with mental health, anxiety, and so forth as young people, as young as teens, early adulthood, say from maybe 16 to 21.
Hmm.
Have you seen a rise in that as well, or what is the statistics dealing with that?
There definitely is a rapid surge in that area. Okay. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but it definitely, we see more and more young people. Okay. When I first started out in this field, in order to even get a diagnosis, you had to be about 7 or 8. We didn't diagnose people under 5. Right now, you can have practically babies that are getting diagnosed. Okay. And so, definitely, there's an increase. We've seen even more of an increase since COVID, because a lot of the younger people who were in the throes of that COVID, not being able to go to school, learning on on the internet, not having that social interaction, we see that they have an increase mental health in terms of anxiety. Going around people brings some anxiety, because if they you figure a 5-year old that was 5 during the heart of COVID, once everything was kind of subsiding and people were getting back out into the community, that 5-year old, it
Mhm.
was like 7 or 8, right?
Right,
So those years when you're learning interaction and learning how to socialize, they miss that.
right.
So now that they're 8, they're in an environment where they have to socialize, and socialization is just not there. They're anxious. People make them anxious, all of those kinds of things. So, yes, to your question, it is a rapid surge. A lot of it is, upbringing. Those of us who have parented and are a little more old school, we don't want to admit it, but we have actually crippled the next generation because they don't know how to problem solve. Everything makes them anxious, everything makes them depressed, everything makes them, overwhelmed, and all of those things. And so that's where we are.
So how do we correct that as parents? What do you see? Because you're a parent and I'm a parent, especially now, like I said, where do you think they dropped the ball? What was done differently that we learned how to problem solve that this generation does not?
So where we dropped the ball is at the very beginning, because those of us who had those strict, rigid parents, we were like saying, "Oh, I don't want to raise my child like that," right? So
Mhm.
that's where we actually dropped the ball. We're now finding out that even though our parents may have seemed rigid or strict or whatever we want to label it, they were teaching us problem solving. So case in point, if I didn't know how to do something for homework, my mother, I was a first generation college student, so
Mhm.
my mother didn't know how to do that math and all of that, the typing and all of those things. And her solution was, that's your homework, you have to get it done before school, I'm going to bed, don't go to bed until it's done, right? And so she wasn't staying up with me. Now, as a parent, we have parents that are doing their children's homework so they can get them, and all kinds of stuff, because we don't want our children to go through what we went through. And so that is part of the problem. And so we learn that, yeah, something might be difficult, but it's not impossible.
Mhm.
We learn that life isn't always a bowl of cherries. We learn that sometimes you're going to have to deny yourself to pay your bills. We learned all of that. This generation, they don't even know how to write cursive. They don't know how to write out a check. They don't even know what a check is, right? So all of that is overwhelming to them. It overwhelms them. The least little thing can set them off.
Wow.
And the, the one thing is they're talking about it more. So we didn't anxiety. The solution for anxiety is, I told you to get up there and do that. Go do it. Like, there
Mhm.
was no discussion, right? But our kids, we were gentle parenting. We were negotiating. We were asking them what they wanted, and so now they don't know how society, to them, just being in society overwhelms them.
Wow. And it brought me back to what you said. I remember if I was afraid to do something, I still had to do it, whether it was at church. I remember I moved with my grandparents when I was 10, almost 11. And I remember I had to go, my grandmother said, okay, you have to go to church. She was taking me to church. She wasn't going with me because she went to my grandmother was Baptist and my grandfather was Methodist. So my grandmother took me to the nearest church where my grandfather was a member, but he didn't go either. And I remember her taking me. She said, "Okay, you got to go to Sunday school, so I'm gonna take you to church." And she dropped me off. I said, "But Grandma, I don't know anybody." She said, "That's okay, you will." And so I remember having to walk into this church, didn't know anyone, a 10-year-old, almost 11-year-old. And that's how, my first experience, because she said, you will meet someone. And I remember even further back, I don't know if there was anxiety because there was a word that wasn't used back in my day. And I used to play the piano. And I remember as a little girl, I must have been 5 years old, and I had to do my first recital. I remember I was so afraid. I was so nervous. But not doing it was not an option. Having a temper tantrum definitely was not an option. My mom didn't play that at all. Where now the spanking and all that, they consider it child abuse, so we're not going to do that. But I knew my mom was stern enough that you're going to do this. I don't care how terrified you are, you're going to do this. So I knew I had to,
Well,
because I had
Apostle,
to listen. So I had to do it.
mm,
And so that was, like you said, the different parenting, as far as the reasoning and the verbalization, where we allow our children to express themselves, or talk, talking about things are okay. And I remember my younger sister, I have a sister 13 years younger than me. So by the time my brothers and I were raised different than my younger sister, because my mom was into what the doctor said and the psychiatrist, all of that stuff. And I remember her saying, "Oh, she didn't want to spank her. They said just to let her express herself and all of that." And that went really well until one day my mom, I never will forget, went into a store like a Walmart, a smaller store, and my little sister wanted some. She probably was 3 or 4 years old, and she fell out in the store. everything, she had a temper tantrum, she fell out and was screaming. So at that point, everything that my mom was trying to be so clinical, my mom was a nurse, she was trying to be so clinical, everything that she had said went out the door. Because she was like, she got her up, she swatted her, embarrassing her, throwing a fit in the store. So that went out the window. And so just like you said, we didn't want to. I've heard individuals say, though that's child abuse, I'm not raising my child like that. But and sometimes it is, but most of us turned out okay. From
Absolutely.
the discipline, the structure. Structure is key because wherever you go, that's one thing my husband always told our sons. Wherever you go, you're gonna have to listen to someone, whether it's that person on the job, that at church, that spouse. You go and you're gonna follow. There are rules. There are rules. Even if you don't like the rules here, there are rules in the world. So that's so key what you said, that how we drop the ball with our children.
And I will tell you that was what you went through was what we would say is social anxiety, right? But like you said, we wasn't calling it anxiety. We didn't. It wasn't a matter of what it is. All we knew was that our parents said do it, and we had to do it. I was actually literally just telling my pastor earlier this week. I had social anxiety as a child too, but I didn't know it. Every time they would call me to sing, I would cry. But it was like, okay, but you on the program, so
That's
sing this
right.
song.
That's right.
And I would cry all the way through the song, right?
Did you? Oh my goodness.
And it was, now that I think about it, I cringe because it's like, wow, I really had social anxiety, and I'm standing in front of all these people, tears just rolling down my face, singing songs, and they, oh, she sounds so pretty, whatever, and like now I sing, but I won't sing in public. And the reality of it is that was social anxiety. And that's exactly what our young people today are going through. But now we have labels for it. We went through it
But we
and
didn't know what it was.
we didn't know what it was. And our parents didn't know. So they couldn't get us the help that we needed because they didn't know. You figure autism is on an all time high. People being diagnosed with autism, and adults have autism. Okay, so if they have it in adulthood, they had it as a child, but nobody was talking about it,
Mhm.
and so they live their whole lives not knowing why they're awkward, not knowing why they never got invited to hang out with the friends, not knowing what to say. The whole nine, all of that stuff is it was there. We lived through it,
Mhm.
but we have become more educated. We're talking about it more. We're doing forums like this so people can become educated. And so, um, this is why we see, I wouldn't say more the behavior per se, because I think the behavior was there. We had the behavior, but
Mhm.
we hear about it more because people are talking about it. And because we're educating people, they're learning that if I'm not having a good day, I'm not having a good day. So it's okay. I was that parent that if my children said, Mom, I need a mental health day, I gave them a mental health day from school. You know, um, my mother, it was like you had to be on death's door to stay
Yeah.
home from school. So we definitely wasn't getting a mental health day.
So do you think, because the Bible said that we have what we say, and now with all the labels and identification that's out there, do you think it's an overuse because they're like, oh, I need a mental health day, or oh, I'm having anxiety, or just saying those things where, like you said, we didn't know what it was. And thankfully that I just went through that, being nervous anytime I had to perform in front of people. But I got through it. I was
Mhm.
nervous. I did it. It was expected. So, we moved on. Like, ooh, that's over with. But not it didn't really have an effect, as far as I know, a long term effect. It's just like with anything else you call. I always say I get bees. People say butterflies. No, I get bees because it's like a buzzing in my stomach. It's not a flutter at all. So I think so. Do you think it's because the words are used so loosely now that, oh, I'm having anxiety, oh, I'm having this, that maybe there's an overuse, or what, we may have some symptoms, and we have what we say, but maybe like an overuse. What are your
I
thoughts?
definitely believe that there is an overuse. I've said this a couple times, because I go to different ministries and churches and trying to bridge the gap between faith and mental health, and I say it all the time. Now that there is legitimately an increase, so let me just legitimize that there is legitimately an increase in the diagnoses of mental health. Okay, um, but because of that, from a spiritual angle, I believe the enemy has taken that and has exacerbated it, right? So you
Mhm.
have little babies talking about they have anxiety, or talking about their aces, and you're looking at them like, do you even know what that means? Because they hear it. They have this device at their fingertip
Mhm.
where they can, Google. Now AI tells you anything you want to know. And so
Right.
literally we have people come into therapy and they've already quote unquote diagnosed themselves because they looked it up, and they're saying to you, well, I have, and they say it so convincingly you think a doctor gave them that diagnosis. And a lot of times, most of the times, I ask, like, who gave you that diagnosis? And they'll say, oh, I saw it on AI, or I looked it up on Google. Like, what?
Yeah.
So I definitely believe that, from a spiritual angle, the enemy, any weakness that he sees, right? What does the Bible tell us? The enemy is lurking, seeking whom he can devour. So if a person is already emotionally compromised, that's the enemy is definitely going to get in there and, wreak havoc if the person themselves doesn't recognize it and doesn't realize, okay, I need to get a grip on this. There's
Right.
also another overusage. Everybody's a narcissist. Everybody's gaslighting. Everybody, and listen, everybody's not gaslighting you. Just because I had to redirect you, I'm not gaslighting you. I'm not trying to harm you. Right. And we use those terms so loosely. I tell clients all the time, everybody is not a narcissist. Now you may have one in your life, but it doesn't apply. Some people are actually on the spectrum, but we're saying they're narcissistic. And what people don't realize, a person on the spectrum and a person that's narcissist, their behaviors mirror each other. So you could actually be in a relationship or have a child that's on the spectrum, and you're calling them a narcissist, right? Because the behaviors look similar. But it's a big difference. A person who's on the spectrum may have hurt your feelings, but they didn't do it deliberately. A person who's a narcissist, they wanted to hurt your feelings. They wanted to make you feel little, right? And so not understanding that difference, a lot of times people are using terminology. First of all, they're using it incorrectly. And again, I believe the enemy has taken, what is definitely an increase in a weakness, and has just driven it home. And now everybody has taken on a piece of it. And what I try to tell people is the same way we want to take on the negative, let's take on the positive, because even though the enemy is speaking that to you, we know a savior who came, and he wants to heal us no matter what the infirmity is.
Right.
So he
Right.
can heal us from mental health. He can heal us from, I believe God can heal a narcissist if they really wanted to be healed.
Right. Right. That's it. Because he is the ultimate healer. He is for sure.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
The other thing is, I've noticed, as like you say, there has been an increase in awareness of the different phases or attributes of the mental health spectrum. The person who's dealing with the mental health piece is going to therapy. What is your suggestion? Because it's like when one of my children had the chicken pox, the doctor gave me a prescription and told me, okay, this is how I need to take care of this child with this, condition right now. So, what do you recommend, if, because I've encountered parents who have young adult children that are dealing with and expressing, saying, oh, they feel like this, they have anxiety, depression, they saying all of this. And as believers, we pray. But what's the other thing? Or if my husband, if some could be a spouse that has PTSD, and since the other spouse may have never experienced that, or the parents, other than prayer, what is your suggestion for the spouse or the parent that has a loved one, or anyone who has a loved one that they're close to, that help them understand and how to manage that relationship?
So, Apostle, let's think about when COVID first hit. And when COVID first hit and we didn't have vaccines, nobody really knew where COVID was coming from or what it could do. We just knew that if you got COVID, it was a strong possibility you would die, right?
Mhm.
And so during that time when it was at the height, we couldn't even go outside because they were telling us that just the mere fact of going outside, you could catch COVID, right?
Mhm.
Um, but one thing that we have to remember that was significant is if you were in a household with somebody that contracted COVID, even if you tested negative, they were quarantined for, I don't remember the numbers, but let's just say
I think
7
it was
days.
2 weeks. I think it was 2 weeks.
Okay, so they were quarantined for 14 days, right? But
Mhm.
anybody that came in contact with them, they had to be quarantined for
Mhm.
21 days, for 3 weeks, right? And the reason we had to be quarantined, if you came in contact with a person who had COVID, we had to be quarantined longer because the statistics were saying that you were exposed, but the symptoms may not show up in you right away.
Right, right,
You had to be quarantined longer to give the symptoms time to manifest,
right,
right? It's the same thing with mental health. Oftentimes we look at and we say, well, that's them, that's my loved one, that's their issue. That no, because now that you have come in contact, or now that is your child. When my twins had COVID, we always on quarantine, right? We all had to walk around with Lysol, with masks and all that. It wasn't just them. It wasn't a them problem, it was an our problem.
right,
And during that time, everybody had to make sure that they were using, I'll just say, universal precautions. It's the same thing. If our child has mental health, we can't help our child. If our child is diagnosed or we see some behaviors that are questionable, we have to educate ourselves. And that means that we are going to have to go to therapy. We are going to have to talk to somebody. We are going to have to get the information, because how can you help somebody if you yourself don't understand what's going on? When
right.
when my twins got COVID during that heightened period, the Department of Health called my house. And I had two babies that had COVID, but the Department of Health called. And why did they call? They called to educate me as a parent, to say, okay, this is what we need you to do. These are the symptoms we need you to look out for. This is what happens if you don't see this improvement in such and such. And so I could have said, well, that's them. My twins were old enough at the time. They could have taken care of themselves, but it was our problem and we had to conquer it together. But in order for me not to panic, I needed the education. I needed to know, what do I need to do to keep my family safe, but to also help my twins heal. And so we have to do the same thing. A lot of times parents will say they want us to come and they want us to work with the children. That's not going to work, because we can help the children and the child can get the help. But if that environment around the child doesn't change, the child is going to only manifest those same behaviors we help them with. So it's a family issue. It's a unit. It's a system that has to come together when we see children who are diagnosed. And I tell parents all the time, children are a carbon copy of you, whether you want to admit it or not. I can
Wow.
look at my daughter and I'm like, oh yeah, she got that honest, right? Um, I can look at my son, and even with my son, he looks just like my husband, but they say he act like me. And certain things he do, I gotta say, yeah, he got that honest, right?
Uh-huh.
We only want to claim the good stuff. We don't want to claim
The not so good stuff, yeah.
So good stuff when they going off talking back and all that kind of, they got that from somewhere too, and it's probably you, right? So we have to recognize that our children are only manifesting as a child, and I'm gonna let the children off the hook a little bit. When children manifest these very mature, they call it big emotions now, that's learned behavior. So they learned that from somewhere. A
Uh-huh.
lot of times they learned it from home, but parents don't want, or whoever is raising these children, they don't want to admit that. But they didn't come out the womb with those big emotions.
Wow, this has been so good, Dr. Kia. There's just so many questions. If someone wants to reach out to you, because Dr. Kia is available for workshops, just anything, just reach out to her. So if someone wants to connect with you or reach out to you to get more information or insight, even more about even your urgent care for mental health, how do they reach out? How do they find you?
So they can find me on all of the social media platforms. I'm very easily accessible. They can actually Google me. They can just put me in. I didn't know this until a couple weeks ago. They can put my name in, and all this, everything about me comes up. So I am. They can Google me. Also, I can send the link to you. Apostle, my daughter put together this beautiful link tree where every speaking engagements, anything they want to know about me, it comes up in this one link. So they can find me there, and they can also go to our website, which is www.findingyourwaynow.com.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. Um, any closing remarks? Because I really appreciate this. Is so good. It's always so great to have you to sit down and talk to you about what's going on, what's new. So, anything else you want to share before we get off here tonight?
Just that this being mental health awareness, and I want to encourage people to try to get the education, get information. Information is power. The Bible tells us for a lack of knowledge, people perish. So if something's going on, you don't understand, you're questioning, you're concerned about, get the information. It's better to get the information and not need it than to need it and just operate in ignorance. I always want people to remember mental health is just one form of illness. It's the same way we would treat heart attack, the same way we would treat diabetes, the same way we would treat anything we found out in the physical. Let's be that diligent with making sure our mental health is there.
That's good. That's good. Well, thank you again, Dr. Kia, for coming on and sharing and kicking us off right with the Mental Health Month. And I just want to give my love to your beautiful daughter. I saw she's graduated and doing well. She's a mini you. Moving on, doing what she does. Very proud of her and the things that she's doing.
Thank you so much.
Like I said, thank you again for coming on. And thank you guys for watching Gretchel Dixon Let's Chat. And we'll see who the speakers will be for next week. Y'all have a good night. God bless you.
God bless.